How's it going, everybody? Bingo here. I'm with the Duel Factory for a long-awaited iteration of the X2 Drop podcast, where we sit down and talk about anything and everything Yu-Gi-Oh related. So, first things first. It's been like 2 years, Joe?
Centuries, 4 decades, 93 years, and something. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I've been gone as long as it's taken Mystic Mind to get banned, So a lot has happened in the time that I've stepped away, and I've gotten the luxury to step back into the game during a, what would you call it, a Tier 0 format or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so there's quite a bit to discuss. We're going to talk about just kind of overall a couple ideas today. One, how I just got back into the game, and then two, the state of the game. And we'll probably lead down the road of how we look at Tier 0 formats, how this one specifically impacts the rogue decks, because each Tier 0 deck is Tier 0 for a reason, and this one is, I believe, a little bit more unique than a lot of the ones that we've had in the past because of the way it suppresses the rogue or the less powerful decks, because it's not in the same way that, Spiral and Zodiac were. So first things first, I do want to say congratulations. Joe, how you got your invite this year, and you recently did well at a regional, correct?
I did.
So how'd you do?
I did do that. If memory serves me, I got 7th place. My record was X11, 5 wins, 1 loss, and a draw, if I remember it correctly.
Man, so close. If you got that X2, you would have been able to step out of there. What were you playing? And it was before Tier got the Ishizu cards, yes? Or was it before Tier?
Yeah. So it was 2 weeks before we got Magnificent Mavens. I don't know why it's so hard for me to pronounce that. But I was playing Eldritch at the time because we had just got Fusion Destiny back to 3. And I wanted to play Phoenix Enforcer. We also got Night Ear Servant back to 3. And I hadn't actually been playing the game as much as I had used to. So I wanted to play something that I could slow the pace of the game down, and that's why I decided to play Eldritch, and it just worked out for me.
Okay, so that was pre-Magnificent Mavens, which was a pretty substantially different format, right? Like Tier was present, but it wasn't this powerhouse that it is right now, right?
It's kind of funny because Tier was definitely still the best deck, and that was my hardest matchup, but I still chose to play that. But now, the power level of all the deck is so significantly different. And now that if you try to play an Eldritch deck, it's just unplayable. I tried doing it the other day, and it wasn't worth it.
Yeah, and that's for one of the things that we're going to get into in a little bit, and that's because what the Ishizu cards did for Tier is give them an immense amount of graveyard control, which is when you're playing a deck, you don't realize how important that is, whether you're a graveyard reliant deck or not. Eldritch is obviously pretty heavily reliant on their graveyard, but just about any deck has just a piece of interaction with their graveyard, and that's such a huge portion of why this version of Tier is really hard to deal with for almost any deck. Because I mean, you have really, really good decks that are considered rogue at this point, like Sprite or the certain versions of Sprite that are still very powerful decks. They're comparable to Tier 1 decks in other formats. That's their power level. It's just because of certain interactions, they can't keep up.
No, for sure. It's just it's one of the things. I was talking to a couple of my buddies earlier about it too. It's not that the Ishizu cards are overwhelming themselves, but it's because I've never actually seen an archetype pair so well with another archetype that it just puts it leaps and bounds above the rest of the decks. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and
because you.
Oh, go ahead. No, you're good. Go ahead.
So when you compare it to other decks, like you were saying, like Sprite decks that were tier one before these decks come out, and then like there were other rogue strategies, like my strategy, like it was a rogue strategy that could do well. But then you release this engine that pairs so well with a deck that's already considered tier one that like the gap between tier one and then now what is essentially like tier zero makes it so hard. And I'm not trying to say like it's impossible, you know what I mean? But like you're on the precipice of like if you're playing a rogue strategy or brave enough to play a rogue strategy, you have to be playing it perfectly step by step to even have a chance because of like the amount of power in this one deck build that we now have.
Yeah, and it's so we'll circle back here in a second, but there's so many interactions that this deck has that it doesn't. If you just look at it, right? Like, so for anybody that watches this on YouTube, there's a future match between Pack and Hani. This was the top 32 feature match from YCS Pasadena. If you look at like what the deck is doing, like interaction by interaction, it doesn't seem very like powerful. It doesn't seem like super crazy compared to like how many times was Spiral tier 0? Was it 2 or 3?
2.
Yeah, both times Spiral was tier 0. It just like it felt so like that deck was going to shut you down the instant it started playing. That's why we had situations where in the top of YCS you have players passing back and forth for 7 turns because they didn't want to risk losing that crucial piece of their engine from their extra deck, because if they lost that, they lost the match, right? Like there's nothing that like you can hit the Rukalos, you can hit all of these small things, but the deck will still function. The deck is still just like unbelievably grindy. It takes like like CJ was just talking about a little while ago in our other chat. He's saying it doesn't do anything like just perfectly, right? It just does everything pretty good. I think that was like a really basic way of saying like what I'm trying to say right now is the deck just covers so much ground in so many different ways. But if you really look at what it's doing, it's not like super crazy.
It's not like previous tier 0 formats where like it's super oppressive, right? Like remember what's the best way to describe this? It's kind of like it's not the same difference as like when a pure Zoo deck tried to go up against like a true Draco Zoo deck and they couldn't effectively answer a masterpiece, right? Like that's not what's happening. Like, and it's kind of funny, like because for those of you who actually can see like the actual like YouTube feed and stuff like that, if you watch that match when they're like milling all those cards against each other, I think there's at least 3 turns in that match. I think that's all it lasted in the game one. But there were 3 exchanges of Chainlink 8 or higher, all preventing you from doing something. And like I think the end of those turns, like both of them were ending with nothing on board. That's the crazy part about that.
Yeah, and it's like that's the technical play, right? So you hear discussion about the format that we're in and how at a high skill level the players seem to really, really enjoy this mirror match because it does reward you for being the better technical player. Like, it's not like Goki Extra Link where I know that wasn't tier 0, but it's not like that format where you just went first, right? Like,
I don't know about that one. Goki felt like tier 0 there for a little bit, especially when they were Gumbler looping you, but that's besides the point.
It did. I don't know if it hit that status, and I'm not going to go back and check, but, you know, you had players that would just they'd roll for a turn and then they'd show each other their hands and then they're like, all right, that's the game 2, right? Like it's not like that. It's like it's crazy. Chainlink 8 and nothing happens.
Bro, and the fact that it's happening 3 times in a singular turn is the crazy part, because it does happen. Because like in the mirror match, you have like your opponent's Kelbex, your Kelbex, their Agido, your Agido, then like all your tier effects, not to mention the Bestial effects, which happened just to be got printed at the most perfect time ever, but that's besides the point too.
Yeah,
but like
and that's the high skill cap, right? That's keeping track of the triggers, because there's what, four main deck tiers that all have effects that you got to keep track of. Did they use?
What is it? There's three that fuse, and then there's the Armageddon Knight that also revives itself. That's actually important too.
Yeah.
That's actually, I think, what is it, in the mirror? I think that's become the most important one, believe it or not.
Yeah, so there are three fuses plus the other one. So there's the four main decks you have to decide or keep track of. Did they trigger? Then there's the at Pasadena, I believe they were maxing out just on all four Ishizus.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's four different triggers. So that's eight cards that you had to keep track of, yours and your opponent's. Which one did they hit? And you weren't ever sure what was going to come up when, because there was that random variance of the mill factor. So I could see the appeal of this format. I really could for somebody that is at that level, but I could also very much see your average. I don't want to say your average player. I'd say your average competitive player, right? That enjoys the game for what it is, but doesn't grind for weeks and weeks and weeks for an event, right? That this could just be like, I don't want to deal with this.
I think that'd be even crazy, because you mentioned it earlier that it's been forever since the podcast came back, or it took as long as Mystic Mind to be banned to come back. But like, that was like arguably one of the best checks to that deck, and now we just don't have it anymore. So that's going to be crazy. Because like, think about it, you have all those effects to keep track of, right? So let's put a player in my shoes, where we were talking about earlier, and I decided to play Eldritch in a slower format because I hadn't had time to learn these matches. So I played something that slowed the pace of the game down for myself. That's essentially what that card could do, and now we don't have it. Not that I'm saying I'm happy that it's not here anymore, because, you know, Ecstatic hated that card, but like, one of the great checks to tier 0 is now gone.
Yeah, but I feel like it wouldn't have, like, this format specifically. Obviously, they would have adapted, but I mean, they still had Pearl Rhino. Are the decks still playing Crime?
I think right now. I think right now the standard builds are playing 1 and 1, one Sulik, one Crime. I think it is.
Yeah, so you'd be able to deal with one mine with Crime, pop one with Pearl Rhino, and then I'm sure if mine wasn't banned, trying to set up like a Baron and your strong hands would be something that you might want to do. But it's gone, so we'll never know. So I don't even know if that, with the power of the deck right now, I don't even know if that would have kept it in check, you know?
I don't know. All I know is, especially now that we have it like 3 DeFi, 3 macro being back, you know, that'll be interesting to see too. The only problem is I think the only deck that plays that effectively is Floowandereeze. But
yeah, and it sucks because there's, I think jumping back to the first point of me coming back into the game, I think there's so many cool, like, new to me cards that are out that I just think I would love to mess with. I would love to play around with. Like, not Flu. Flu doesn't seem like my speed. If that's what you're into, cool. But
what are you talking about? You're a striker player. You would love to play Flu.
No, Striker is still, you know, it's what I'm going with, but I would like the runic cards. I think are just like one of the coolest design cards for me as like just an engine. Like they really appeal to me because I just like their design. And then the sprite cards, I'm not a super big fan of, but I definitely would have messed around with runic sprite if I had caught it in time. But like,
the only thing is, I don't think the runic. You make a good point. I don't think the runic cards are bad. They're just poorly positioned the field spell with the Ishizu cards, because like now like the biggest attraction to it is like drawing 3 every turn, and like now you can't do that.
Yeah, it has a really bad position because of the Ishizu cards, and this goes back to those cards really being the thing that keeps Rogue down. We kind of like hinted at it earlier, but I believe Agito and Medora and Keldo, that shuffle have a quick effect shuffle back?
Yeah, so it's Keldo and Medora that shuffle back, and then Agito and Kelbeck are the mill fives.
Yeah, so the two that shuffle back are, I believe, the two things that are really keeping decks suppressed right now, because like for Runic, for example, trying to resolve the field spell and just having the shuffle back your targets, like that puts you so far behind, right? And then they could just shuffle back a tier on top of one of the cards they shuffle back and then pop your field spell. And if you don't have the level 2 on board, like your field spell's gone. Like, and looking at Sky Striker, right, the deck I had built coming back into the game, right? So it's just like what I was going around with, like having to like shuffle back the targets for roll, or shuffle back the ones Kagari's trying to add back, or how about you have 3 engrave at activation for Widow Anchor, target, chain, shuffle back, now you don't have 3, now you can't take my monster, like that kind of stuff. Funny. Like, it's crazy.
You came back into the game when your favorite deck is arguably the worst it's ever been.
And
like, sure, you have engage and stuff like that, but like, you're never resolving it for 3. You have bestial monsters that are literally the perfect answer to Ray and Rose, right?
Yeah, but
and then like on top of it, even if like they don't have it, like Eradicator's seen so much popularity in decks lately that like your deck is just so poorly positioned, but you decided to come back, which is hilarious to me.
Yeah, and you know why? It's because Alti Ray, that's what got my attention back on the game. What really got me back playing a card game is Magic the Gathering Arena, but we're not going to talk about that.
Magic the Gathering, okay. All right.
So, yeah, but I still enjoy taking this deck to locals, because I think what these, like, people that are just, like, talking like the world's burning down, with this format, what I think a lot of people forget is, especially on YouTube, is locals aren't tier 1 events, right? Like, there's like one tier player at my locals, and I've talked to you about mine. They're like 5-round locals, you know. There's a ton of people, and there's like 1 to 2.
Is completely different.
Yeah, so that's that locals, and I'm sure there's. Everybody's has their own spin, but not every locals is a tier 1 event, right? So I can queue up against tier. I can queue up against Draco Slayer. I can queue up against the freaking Labyrinth deck. Like, I don't know.
I guess it's just the Missouri area for me, because I swear they treat my locals like it's the Super Bowl every week, dog. Every week.
Yeah, and I would like that, but you got to imagine, like, 2 months of this, like, people are going to get bored. You'll see locals thinning out, and then a ban list pops up and everybody's back, right? So yeah, it's a tier 0 format, but how many tier 1 events do we have? How many YCS? Like, when's the next YCS?
That is a good question. I want to say it's not Vegas. There's one before that. There might not be, though.
In North America, or at least the United States, I don't believe there's a YCS until Vegas, which is February 18th. Do I think we're going to get another ban list active before then? No. But I do think that will probably be the last YCS in the United States that has this ban list, because Konami's not stupid. They push product. Their product is dry right now. There's not anything super exciting coming out till then. But if they let the list linger, or they waited 3 weeks to adjust, like, there's really no point, right? So let people have their tier 0 format, but we know Konami does not like tier 0 formats. They have said that multiple times in blog posts in justification for doing specific things. They have said that. So the competitive scene is very dry right now. So that's my belief.
I don't know. We'll see. I think the last time I saw anything drastic happen, I think it was actually. Were you playing during a Pepe format or no?
No, I was not. So I came
Okay.
in, I think Pepe was 2015.
2015, 2016, I think.
Yeah.
But that's the last time.
Oh,
Go
go ahead.
ahead.
No, you're good.
I think that's the last time I remember them doing something. Like I think because they came out, we had full power Pepe. I remember this because Jordan Lee, shout out to him, complained about it because we had full power Pepe for 28 days, and then they had the adjusted list where they put Monkey Board to one and Perform
Plush
Pal
fire.
Skullcrobat Joker to one.
Oh, they didn't touch
But
plush fire.
Plushy, I think no, they did ban it. Now I think about it, or actually, yeah, no, they did ban it.
Yeah,
But
irrelevant. But keep going.
but I just want to point out he wants to talk about how he only had it for 28 days. I had Dark Matter Ruler for 10 days. I've never been more upset in my life. Literally, the day Dark Matter Dragon got released, they put all 4 Dragon Rulers on the ban list, and I've never recovered since.
Yeah, and like that's my kind of my point is we know Konami as much as I'm sure the player base gets frustrated. They do care about the state of their game to an extent because if people don't want to buy product, then they'll stop playing the game. Or if people aren't happy with the game, they'll stop buying product, and it will affect their bottom line at the end of the day, or at least their image of the game.
Oh, for sure.
So I do believe, yeah, you'll have to deal with this at a local level, but that's your locals, right? I can, if I had to put money on it, I would say the majority of locals throughout the country will not be just tier. Like if I had to guess, I'd say it's probably somewhere around the 30% mark.
It'll be a decent chunk for sure, but like, yeah, I mean, you're right. Locals is completely different than actual events. Um, that being said, there are like, for example, locals like mine. Like, if you're just playing a Shizu tier all time, then that definitely has an effect on you. Like, for example, what is it? This last week, so I'm on vacation, so I was playing a local tournament in Springfield, and every single player was everyone was playing the Shizu tier, so that was wild to me for one. But then you go to the locals down the store, and then like it's just like it's kind of like going from Major League Baseball to Little League Baseball.
Yeah, or like high
So I
school
mean,
baseball or something like that.
yeah, like it's just completely different because at that local you won't see a Shizu tier anywhere. So like it's all based on where you go and stuff like that. But if you actually play like a lot of competitive Yu-Gi-Oh, or like let's say for example, let's say me and you, right? We just randomly get on Dueling Book, and like the first like 10 matches where we have like no rating, you don't see any of it. But then like you get on a later day when your rating's higher, and you play for 2 hours, and the only thing you've seen is Shizu tier. Like you're gonna get tired of seeing that eventually.
Yeah, I would not want to play. And even the competitive players that like if they have their invite, they've already gotten their use out of the deck, like they're gonna get bored at the local level. Like if there's no events to look forward to or practice to, because I mean that's what a lot of the quote unquote like meta competitive players like look at is, you know, there's regionals coming up. It's a skill that you need to actively like play your deck, right? And understand niche
sure.
interactions. But if there's none of that to look forward to, you're just gonna sleeve up like your whatever your insert fun deck is, right? And you're just gonna have fun.
You know what the funny thing is? And this format is a great example of it. Like it's not like you can still spice it up. Like there's the Nichiria deck that's running around that you can play. The Madolche
Yeah,
deck
the
is
Madolche
probably
deck seems super fun.
it's probably one in the best position it's been in a long time since the deck's inception because it pairs so well with some of the new cards. Like it pairs well with the Isuzu cards, and it also pairs well with the Vertiself cards and stuff like that. So like you can still spice this format up. But the problem is, it's just like as much as you can spice it up and like pair it with these cards, there's just the one deck is just so far and above that. Especially like you also have to think of it like even like when you're going to local levels, competitive players only want to play if they're like winning. and like they're gonna play what puts them in the best position, and then that's where like locals start to change. So the longer the format goes, the more that's gonna change. But
Yeah.
it is what it is.
Yeah, it's pretty tough to say because, like, yes, I want to play to win, but just like you've taken some random stuff to locals, right? You build it in the most competitive way you can, understanding like, okay, you could be playing a better deck. Like, for example, you were looking at playing the Dark World stuff, whether it was at locals or you were going to take it to the regional you're going to, and that's because like you have foiled out Dark World, you like the deck, and you just want to play it.
Yeah, for sure. But here, I'm also like actively trying to not play Ishizu tier, and that's why I'm just like trying to find something that's like well positioned. And I always thought that deck is, but then like you have all the Bastille cards, you have all the Grave Shufflers and stuff like that. So that might put a damper on that idea.
Yeah, and it's like you can deal with the Bistills, right? The Bistills are really strong, but if you really think about their interaction with you, because yes, Magnamute's super good. It gives you a search in the end phase. It lets them go +1 on on their turn 0. It's really good. But if you're looking at DD, it's essentially the same thing as DD Crow. When you really break it down, its interaction with you, right? So,
oh, for sure,
it's nothing we haven't been dealing with since DD Crow came out like a decade ago. So we can deal with that. It's the shuffling back, all of these other. It's the Ishizu cards themselves is what's really suppressing the fun. I guess that's, and I don't even have to deal with it. But when I'm sitting on my couch, I'm conceptualizing like what I want to play. I'm like, okay, I lose to a shuffle. I lose to one of the Ishizu cards right here. I lose to this.
It's funny that you mention that though, because like one of the reasons I wanted to play the Dark World, and this is just like a little subset to this, but like one of the interesting things that the Dark World deck had that we haven't seen a lot since those like old formats and stuff like that, is it has monsters from the graveyard that summon without starting a chain, like Machina Fortress, or in this case, Grapha, Dragon Lord, or Dark World. So, like, that's why I kind of want to play it, because now, like, Ishizu tier players in general are forced to use their Grave Shufflers before they want to, or, like, in response to a chain. And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to play it, because I think the Dark World deck is best positioned to deal with that. But at the same time, like, it also might not be the move because of that interaction specifically, but there's a lot of back and forth going in my mind about that.
Yeah, and the only way for you to realize like, is that going to work, and is to play the deck, and it might work against a bad or mid tier Ishizu player, but and that's what the thing. It's like, just like with any deck, the pilot is huge with this deck, knowing when their interactions are being forced or when to use them. But we really could talk about this all day, but we're going to wrap this topic up because we only got about 2 minutes left. So you got anything left to say on the current format before I kind of like close it up?
I mean, it is what it is. We're in a format where you can either learn, if you want to play at a high competitive level, you have to learn the mirror. If you don't want to play at a competitive level, reside yourself to locals. Like that's basically what it boils down to.
Yeah, I would say one thing this format's really good for, but before we end the podcast for the night, is helping you realize, or helping you think through the different steps in individual interactions, right? So if you're not the player that really thinks about the second, third, fourth order effects of what you're doing or the potential reactions to the action that you're doing, this format is really good in forcing you to learn that and get better, or you're just going to get beat down over and over again. So this does help you become a better player if you're not already there. And the only way to do that is by playing and having fun, right? Because at the end of the day, that's why we play this game. We want to enjoy it. We like the cards, whatever the reason is. But guys, it has been awesome coming back into the game. It has been awesome catching up with all of the cards that I've missed. I'm still not even close to figuring out everything I missed. So I appreciate anybody that is actually listening to this. And Joe, before I sign off, you got anything to say?
I just want to point out it's been almost 2 years, and Douglas Fridge still has no sauce, and I love it.
Piccolo, you have no sauce. Hey.
Well, guys, it has been a blast. So for anybody that doesn't know, we do stream these on Twitch. Feel free to check that out, twitch.tv/bingo HD. Feel free to check out the Duel Factory. He uploads all his deck profiles and combo tutorials and stuff on his YouTube channel, youtube.com/the Duel Factory. And these podcasts go up same time every single week at around 10 a.m. Central Standard Time or 8 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. And there is a Discord somewhere around here. It should hopefully be coming back alive. I kind of left it alone for 2 years. So if you're still in it, you're the real MVP. I will see you guys next week. Peace out.
Okay, bye.